Welcome into Camel Cole with Evan Budrovich. I'm Chris Amar. Thank you so much for tuning in all year and right here. Our Camel Cole podcast you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, the Varsity Sports app, and GoCamels.com. Hey, a little later in the episode, we'll have Jared Fries on. He's a Campbell alum and our Associate AD of Student Athlete Support Services. That's all of the academic stuff and everything else.
He's a double Camel now.
He is.
With his master's in divinity.
He just got his master's in divinity. He's always great to talk to. Huge sports fan, but he's going to be talking to us mainly about the fact that Campbell Athletics, they finished up a record academic year, literally the best we've ever done academically in Campbell history. And speaking of Campbell history, our track and field team has qualified for 4 events, sending 5 to the NCAA Championships in Oregon in 2 weeks. That's the most in any one year in Campbell history. We have talked in this show about how track and field continues to break the mold, setting records, breaking records at both the conference and school level, and now the best year in this program's history.
We talk about the growth of this program because in the Michael Kelly era, it was the cross-country runners, it was the long distance. There's a certain recruiting strategy to that that's hard to replicate. This strategy is much more attainable, and it really shows the growth of what this coaching staff has done in the hurdles, in the jumps, in the 100-meter on the men and women's side with Jaden Ramsey, the wild card selection. Like, we built a program now.
Yeah.
It's not just you're good at this one particular niche event. We have program depth, and to set a record amount of runners and hurdlers and jumpers, like, man, that exposure for Campbell Athletics is so big. I think back to the Lawrence Kipkwich days, trying to win the 10K and the 5K nationally. When you're in first place on ESPN and they're saying Campbell University, like, that is dollar signs all over the place. I'm Krusty Krabs thinking about the amount of money that brings in for Campbell. And then, too, like, Campbell gets a wild card selection. When has that ever happened that a 100-meter runner gets an at-large berth to compete in the most dynamic race in college sports, the 100-meter sprint on the women's side especially? And then for Chastity Pickett, of course, her Olympic aspirations, those continue in the 400 hurdles where she's not fully healthy but is still doing excellent in her event with a 56-second time. Like, man, this program's rolling, and it's just fun to see the change in staff, the commitment to the new staff, and now the development of these athletes across the board.
Yeah, it's just amazing. You know, over on the men's side, the 4x400 team, Jamal and Jamal Miller, they are twins, and their first name is separated by an E and an A. Deshaun Ballard, Dominique Alexander. They qualify for the second time as a relay team. They were in the 4x100 last year. Jamal Miller, he's going to be individually at the 400. Jamal Miller, his twin brother, he's going to be in the 100. And C.J. McBride, who has been oh so close and so good at a national level, really hasn't been able to put things together in the postseason, is putting things together in the postseason. He is going to be at the high jump. And not only that, he tied for first in the region. So, again, if you're in it, everybody has a chance to get up on the podium, to be All-American. But C.J. McBride has a chance to do something. You mentioned Chastity Pickett. Chastity Pickett, a lot of people are like, okay, where is she and everything like that? She has had some injuries, and she is focused on the Olympic trials. So, again, pulling it back a little bit, not trying to injure to get her ready for what is really the bigger goal, going and trying to make
the U.S. qualifiers are in a month.
Yeah.
So you have NCAA qualifiers, which are very important to win your national championship. And then in New York in a month, they'll compete for a chance to go to Paris. So it is crazy how first summer could be dynamic. We've had Olympians on the golf side for different countries, not necessarily the bigger countries you'd think of, but to have an American track and field participant would be record-breaking.
Yeah, just unbelievable, and that will be a lot of fun to watch. It is on the ESPN family of networks, and it starts in 2 weeks. Of course, GoCamels.com will have all the links for you, everything, but it's going to be so fun. And again, like last year, you know, Chastity Pickett getting on the podium, top 3 in the entire nation, just incredible. Campbell's got a chance to do that same thing, and hats off to Virgil Givens and all he has done, you know, shifting that program from distance dominant to track and field dominant, the sprints and the jumps, what he has done. Again, Campbell is in the national conversation when it comes to national awards, and not only that, getting people into the Olympics as well. Just incredible.
And then our good old friend Baptiste Tejan, former intern, lives in Paris. You might have to go check out the competition for us.
That's right, and no doubt we'll have to check with him. One of the best, as Evan Budrovich going into the Wayback Machine. Okay, speaking of Wayback, we're going to look, I believe, at this Campbell baseball's team's run of 5 straight NCAA tournament appearances, and really realize how special it is. The good thing is, you and I, who have spent so much time around this team in the game, realizing how special it is. Their postseason streak of 5 straight NCAA tournament appearances ended, but the awards continued to roll in. Lawson Harrell, who will go down as one of the best hitters in Campbell history, kind of putting an exclamation point on this era. He is one of just 2 for mid-major conferences on the Golden Spikes Awards semifinal list. That is the list of the best players in college baseball. They just pick one. He is on that list. He's also on the Dick Hauser Trophy semifinalist list, which is the list put together, same thing, but for the college baseball writers. He is Campbell's home run king. He will go down as one of the best hitters in program history.
And his story from hardly playing his first year, he played in 7 games, to then being a situational pitch hitter in the 21 run, a reserve outfielder at best behind 26-year-old Matt Christian. Now he's Campbell's, at 25, all-time leading his home run hitter. And his run, too, he hasn't had the prolific years where you go, wow, he is dynamic personality, dynamic home runs, but he's so consistent, and he's been such a force in the lineup. Big South Player of the Year, first-team All-CA this year, has done it in 2 different leagues, which I think adds perspective to it. A much better baseball league in the CAA, but to still be among the top 3 outfielders in the conference. It was not his fault this team struggled, and he was clearly, even playing through injury the last 2 years, he was a pillar for the program. He's an old country boy who can get out there and do a lot of different things defensively with his arm. And then, too, he's a guy that everyone can relate to, right? Like, he has pro aspirations, but he's not a Zach Neto. He's not going in the first round. He'll get drafted, hopefully, and have an opportunity, but he's a player who's exceeded his expectations growing up 10 minutes from Gardner-Webb. A low recruit, gets an opportunity at Campbell, and has shown that he's now one of our all-time greatest players.
I mean, it is really incredible. And again, another thing about Justin Hare and his staff that has completely changed around and done so many different things, that this was a guy that came in as a pitcher. 2-way guy. They said you're gonna hit. When he finally got a chance, he hit 274, then he hit 259. He had 6 career home runs going into his final 2 years playing, and they turned him into a guy that hit 371, 351, and mashed 45 home runs over his last 2 years. I mean, again, another example of Justin Hare being able to pluck some guys out of high school and turn them into professional baseball players. Just incredible.
Bryce Arnold, Ryan Chassie, Zach Neto.
Yeah.
You could add Drake Pearson, a JUCO transfer.
No doubt.
But their most recent draft crop, and Thomas Harrington, of course, have not been 5-star recruits, have not been guys who have been drafted out of high school, right? They were planning to play in college, had exceeded their draft rankings. Neto was a 2-star prospect, if you can believe that. And others in that group, too, have all now been drafted and are playing in minor league organizations. That development has happened the last 12 years under Justin, and even farther when he was an assistant, and has shown that he can take a player that people didn't think was very good and turn them into a legitimate All-American, and in this case, a draft prospect.
Just amazing. And this baseball team that we've talked about, Evan, that has so many injuries, and you put Grant Knipp back in the lineup for 2 more weeks. Campbell makes it to the CAA tournament.
Maybe 2 more games.
Who knows? Yeah. You take one of their starters, Friday and Saturday guys, throw a combined 3 starts. You put one of them in for another month. Campbell has more wins and everything. Campbell has beaten 3 teams this year that are hosting regionals. A handful of teams that they have beaten that are in the NCAA tournament. But 3 teams, including, remember UC Santa Barbara? Campbell beat up on them 2 out of 3 games. They're hosting a regional out west. NC State is hosting a regional. ECU is hosting a regional. 3 teams that they beat. That just shows you what kind of talent this team has. And if they would have stayed healthy, who knows what would have happened. We would be talking about we're at the Georgia Regional right now in the NCAA tournament.
Well, and to factor in, you play Carolina tight twice. You're 4-4 against regional hosts, right?
Yeah.
Top 16 programs, and you have another top 25 win mixed in. So that just shows you that this program has their ceiling, even in a bad year, was we can beat top 25 teams about half the time. We'll go on the road, we'll beat good teams. We'll host East Carolina, beat them here, dominate Duke in this ballpark. And like you mentioned with Santa Barbara, that pitching staff, I know week one is a certain different time of the year, but we still hit the ball all over the park and dominated a really good pitching team. And I'm also happy for Santa Barbara they got to host, right? And I think back to our experience last year with a good bid, an opportunity to host, didn't get the mid-major selection that maybe people around here wanted. But I'm also glad the committee this year valued that, right? And that shows that in the future, it doesn't make you feel better about last year, but it shows that the committee values good regular seasons, good RPI, all the metrics we checked in 23 that may open the door for a Campbell-like program in 25 and in 26.
Yeah, and I think we saw, again, the fact that there are so many teams that get in, and when it comes to hosting regionals and that, look, I'm not going to argue with you that the eighth place team in the SEC couldn't win the CAA or the Big West or the WAC or whatever we're talking about, but they didn't, and they didn't play, and you have to look at the metrics and say, even though that team has a UC by their name, or even that team is Campbell out of what was last year the Big South, you got to give them what they deserve, especially since you asked them to jump through all these hoops and then not giving it to them. So you're right. It happened a year too late, but they awarded it to them. So, we will see what happens from here. Again, Campbell head coach Justin Hare. So much was new this year, and I would not expect this to be the start of a pedestrian stretch. This is a Campbell team that we've seen reloads. They don't rebuild, and that's what they did this year. They had one of their deepest teams ever, but they had one of the most injury prone seasons that they ever had. Speaking of, we were talking about all of Justin Hare's alums that are now in the pros, whether at the major league or minor league ranks, but some ProHumps making certainly a splash at the PGA level. Jesper Svensson, who was a 2019 grad, we talked about him in this show about what he has been doing in the European Tour. Well, he came over here for the PGA Championship, made the cut, finished in the top 60. Just amazing what he has done. And then a couple of his teammates are going to be in PGA's Corn Ferry Tour, the minor league tour coming up this weekend.
Well, what an amazing picture that was shared this week. So Brett McLam, friend of the program, he's a Harnett County kid. He went to Campbell, NC State grad year. A golfer who probably never played, how do I say this correctly? He was an amazing golfer, but it was not his best sport. Yeah. And yet he was still a top 5 Campbell golfer, incredible scores. His caddy for that week and friend, Pontus Nyholm, who's competing in the Corn Ferry Tour and has had opportunities to go to the PGA. He's been right on the cusp. Yeah. He's playing in the Rex Hospital Open this weekend. And it's so neat to have that connection, right? And of course, when you have the European influence, you have the American influence at Campbell. And Pontus, I mean, I know Jesper's talented. Pontus is next level. Yeah. And when he puts it all together, you're going to hear both those names. I mean, even Jesper now is in the top 120 in the country, in the world for golf rankings. Yeah. If he holds that spot, he has a chance to qualify for a tour card coming up next season. So, I mean, he could be a tour player in the blink of an eye. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Or he could stay, like some do, over in Europe where his home is, because he's a top 5 player there, and that tour is maybe just below the PGA Tour, and of course the top half of that tour, obviously you can see what they do on the PGA Tour. So there will be a lot of golf and a lot of fun golf here. If you're listening to this podcast here, you know where to get us. Tales from the Creek, which is Stan Cole's long-form interviews where he talks to Campbell's alum when it comes to athletics. So we've got a lot of golf coming up. Of course, the U.S. Open is going to be just down the road in Pinehurst in a couple of weeks. So leading up to that,
is Gaylord making an appearance?
I'm not sure if Gaylord will be at the
playing of the U.S. Open.
At the U.S. Open. There'll be a lot of Campbell employees down there as well. And And Stan does something. There's a Campbell alum who is going to be a caddy in that event. But speaking of caddies, Kylie Pratt, former unbelievable golfer who finished in the top 20 in the nation when she was here. She's been a caddy on the LPGA Tour for years, and so that just dropped a couple of days ago on Tales from the Creek. Great story. She's from Australia, talking about what this place meant to her. And then Brad Fritsch, who was the last Campbell golfer that was consistently on the PGA Tour. He made cuts. He was in the big events. Canadian, now lives in Raleigh. He is retired from professional golf and now runs a business, and it's going to be a two-parter with him and Stan. They talk about everything. He is a great guy that really knows how these things work. So we will be talking to him again, and then Campbell is special with Stan Cole is going to go around and follow up the former Campbell who is on the bag. It's going to be really fun.
And worth noting, there's the anniversary of Keith Hills this year, the golden 50-year anniversary of the course, right? And the course that was founded by Campbell University as a way to extend its reach, to add golf to the campus. And we talk about the stories of John Crooks recruiting players.
Yep.
There's also a community. There's a passionate Keith Hills neighborhood that your parents are a part of and live in. Don't have the mail envelopes to them, but you get the point. And the Keith family came by this year. They made a donation to name the Keith Ballroom in the Oscar and Harris Student Union. So that Keith family's been very involved, part of the golf course, part of the union. And to see that 50-year of history of a golf course, you know, in North Carolina, there's a ton of golf, but this Harnett County history, it's the largest course in Harnett County. And to see that passion and that golf community come together is awesome.
So it's such a beautiful course and such a fun place to play. But you're right, there's a community around it too. The ones that you see on the putting green, the group that you see that goes out at 7 a.m. every morning. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, folks, this is interesting when you think about it, but in just about 2 months, we will have the 24 and 25 season, fall season for Campbell Sports. They're second in the CAA, kicking off. Right now, your football season tickets are on sale. Now, 6 home events, all family-friendly times at gocamels.com. Reserve your tickets now. If you haven't renewed, renew by the June 1st deadline. All of our fall sports schedules, except cross-country, are now out at gocamels.com. So in addition to football, you can see the entire schedule, home and away. Volleyball, men's soccer, and women's soccer all posted as well.
How about the CAA getting their schedules out in May? I mean, a ton of credit to the conference office, too, navigating volleyball's back-to-back schedules. They have a good schedule at home this year. Towson comes in, regular season champs. You get Wilmington in the building.
Absolutely.
East Carolina comes here for a midweek kind of that home opener contest and a good tournament. I don't know who the sponsor is now, but a good home tournament early on. And Greg Gorl's always scheduled well.
Yep.
I think we've seen that program could easily be right back in the hunt. And then both soccer programs playing NC State, one exhibition, one regular season, but that shows that Campbell can draw good programs here as well.
Yeah, no doubt. You talked about it. Women's soccer will have an exhibition against Wofford here on August 5th. That'll be the first home event. The men.
Did you cringe when you said that, August 5th?
I know,
you were like,
I know,
that's
right?
so early.
The men, that exhibition against NC State on the 16th. The week before, they're at UNC, so they are really getting it going in those games that quote-unquote don't count. And then our first home event officially of the 2024-25 season, CAA women's soccer opens up with NC State. Second year in the CAA, women's soccer opens up with NC State on August 22nd. Then the men are at home against Radford on the 23rd. They play ODU the week after that. So all of the stuff is on gocamels.com. Remember, volleyball, men's soccer, women's soccer, all absolutely free. And if you haven't seen those great teams play, come out. And again, it'll be a volleyball team that'll be rebuilding a little bit, but you like the direction they're going. They were unbelievable last year. And then men's and women's soccer, a little bit of a rebuild year last year. So interesting to see what they do in their second year of the CAA.
Less than 100 days from football kickoff at Liberty. I mean, it's crazy. We're less than 100 days.
Yep.
Like the countdown's already on.
Yep, and this week, some of those early season ESPN Plus games, we'll see, what broadcasts we're going to be on for those away games. Of course, everything here at home flow, we already have the times for, but then it'll be interesting to see what networks we end up on and all of that.
And some nuance, if you want to go beyond the fold here, Liberty is in a CBS Sports conference with Conference USA. Some of the non-conference games are E-plus packages.
Right.
Maybe they say, hey, this is the big CBS Sports game of the week, and we're on, linear CBS Sports. Could be on their digital package, could be on E-plus. Like, there's some options now you can play around with to see where you're going to play.
Yeah, we will have to see all that kind of coming out here in the next couple of weeks. Campbell begins 3 straight games on the road, and then we'll come home for 3 straight as well, which should be fun. Also, we're really burying the lead. This summer in July, Evan Budrovich gets married. So, Evan, I've been married for 5 years. It's going really, really well. So, any questions that you need to ask me, I'm right here for you.
Well, I remember your wedding was on a homecoming weekend.
Right.
So we planned a little bit ahead that.
Yeah,
we did it in July. We're not doing wedding cake, but we're doing wedding ice cream truck. It's like a late night.
Gosh.
So the truck shows up halfway through the event. How valuable, because the plate is one thing, but the dessert, like how important is eating, because during your wedding, you're drinking, you're enjoying it. Like, how much should I eat throughout the day to pace myself with the drinking?
I mean, Evan, I don't think you have to worry about that, because I have seen you consume unbelievable amounts of food for someone that is in such good shape and has always been in good shape. So I think you're going to be fine. There is, I think I've told you this before, but my biggest thing about wedding is, like, there will come a point where you're like, wow, my future wife is either too stressed out, I'm either too stressed out, our in-laws are too stressed out, my parents are too stressed out. Is this all worth it? It definitely is. Weddings, they cost a little bit. You and I both said we should have gotten the wedding videography business or whatever, but it is definitely worth it, because it seems like a cliche, but there'll be a moment where you look around and realize it. Yeah, you'll never have all the people that you love that close to you in one room ever again, for better or for worse. And so it is really, really worth it. And it comes a time you're not going to be able to go around and see everybody. You're not going to be able to talk to everybody. Just kind of concentrate on having fun with you and your wife, and it's awesome, and it's all worth it. I promise. I promise it is. But that's awesome. An ice cream truck. I hadn't heard of that before.
2 Roosters ice cream in Raleigh is coming down.
Man.
And our DJ is a Campbell alum.
Is he?
Yeah, and he rides rollerblades, and he rolls around the venue. So there's going to be a little bit of fun to it.
Oh, my gosh.
Wedding stuff.
Man, that our first podcast coming up in August, boy, will we have a lot to say. And I think I've told you this before, but the bedrock of any marriage, just be completely honest, even if it hurts, with your wife, and that'll head a lot of things off at the pass. And it's kind of like, be honest now and talk about something that might be uncomfortable for a half an hour and maybe be a little bit sore at each other for half a day, or hold it in and let it explode in 6 months and then it's really bad. I've done both ways. The talking to her and being honest earlier is the best one, but you definitely picked the right one. You're very lucky to have her. She's lucky to have you.
I picked a Pirate fan.
ECU alum, which is okay.
We're going back to East Carolina in a year.
Yeah.
The next season.
Yeah.
So I think she'll be first in line for tickets.
Oh, man, that's right. She will be there. House divided. You'll have to get one of those license plates.
If they have one of those with a pirate and a camel on it, I'll buy it. If it's somewhere online, I'll find it.
You know what I'm going to do, too? One of the first questions I'm going to ask Jared Fries, a double hump camel that met his wife, Tammy Fries, who worked here for a time in our development office doing a little bit of everything, was a volleyball player. So they have kind of that athletic love connection. They have 2 beautiful children. They've been married for a couple of decades now. That'll be the first question I'll ask Jared, if he has any advice for you. And we will get to that after this message from the Fighting Camel Club. Jared Fries, in charge of our student-athlete support and academics and everything, he'll tell us about the record-breaking year for Campbell Athletics in the classroom. For Evan, I'm Chris. Jared's coming up after these messages. Thank you so much for listening all year. The Fighting Camel Club empowers student-athletes to lead with purpose on and off the field. Over the past 3 years, donations to the FCC have helped fund scholarships, facility enhancements, health and wellness improvements, and the greatest needs of the athletics department. With our move to the CAA, the need for your support has never been greater. Memberships begin at just $100 and can get you access to exclusive merchandise and seating. Head to GoCamels.com and hit the Give button. Joining me now, we've been talking about it all show, but Jared Fries. And Jared, if you could just start off with the unbelievable academic job that the athletic department did and the essays over the last couple of semesters here.
For sure. Happy to. It was a really incredible job by all of our student athletes this year academically. I finished with a 3.173, which 3.0 is kind of our benchmark for success. We all want to stay above that. We've done that now 9 straight academic years collectively. And then this year was the first time our men's collective GPA was at a 3.0 or better, and that we have recorded, which is really strong as a group. I think what's really impressive is there tends to be teams that stand out or certain students that are consistently high performers, but this year, the spring semester really showed a collective effort across the board. You know, roughly 500 athletes, and everybody really contributed in a big positive way to the academic success of the overall program. It's not really divided on, well, here's a strong academic team and not over here. Everybody's doing good work in the classroom.
Yeah, that's what's amazing. It's so many teams, it's so many students, and the fact that I think it was all but 2 teams were over a 3.0, which is incredible.
Yes, it is. And one that I find particularly impressive from our group is that 2/3 of the whole population of student athletes had a 3.0 or higher for the whole year. I mean, that's just really impressive. That's way over half. Just over 10% with, I think it was 11% with a 4.0 for the entire academic year. Perfect GPAs. That's really hard to do, no matter who you are, what you're studying, just to never be below an A. So really high numbers from a lot of students.
You and your department work so closely with these teams and these individual student athletes. Talk about what your department does and how much you do for these student athletes.
Sure. We're really closely connected to them from the time they start being recruited all the way through graduation. And I think that really makes a huge difference, is just the amount of touch points that we have. I think the big thing is that we're invested in supporting them and making sure that they are in a position to do well at all times. And so we keep in regular contact. For new students, we're meeting with them on a regular scheduled basis just to keep up with how it's going in the transition. Being in college is a lot different than being in high school. Even if you transfer, being at a new institution is a lot different than your previous one. So it's really important to us that students get their footing as quick as they can and find success early on. So we really focus on that by checking in with them, asking them how they're doing. I like to tell them we're very intrusive in that way. There's no secrets when it comes to grades, but I also remind them that it's because our goal is success. We want to know the ways that you're doing well in the classroom, the things that are going in a positive direction for you, and then the places that you're challenged as a student. We're asking those questions and then trying to help them identify a solution, you know, whether it's a resource outside of our department, tutoring on main campus, meeting more often with their faculty member study groups, those sorts of things, or something we directly help with. Maybe they need help managing their time. Their schedule is so much different than they were used to, and the way you organize it is a lot different. So they might need help putting those pieces together because it's a lot all at once when you're taking 5 or 6 classes and then keeping up your sport demands. So helping them identify solutions and then putting them into place and then checking in regularly. So we're not going from the beginning of the semester to midterm and just seeing a midterm grade and then following up at that point. We're staying in contact more regularly, trying to build trust so that when they do run into trouble, which is normal, you know, it's part of the college experience, that they know who to reach out to and they're willing to speak up because they know that we're there to support them. I think that's the big key.
Jared, you're not only in charge of the department that keeps an eye on the academics of our entire student athlete population. You work so closely with coaches. You have such a unique Campbell story because you're a Campbell alum now 2 times over, just from getting your diploma again last week. But you were a student here, got your first degree from Campbell back in 2004. You came back to work here in 2015. Yep. 2015. You and Chris Clemens came in at the same time, and some really good things happened.
Dr. Creed, we were packaged.
and then to further to put together your Campbell story, you married who you met here at Campbell, a 4-year volleyball player, and Tammy Fries, who worked for the university as well. So, first off, what is that like having all these decades of Campbell, and now you bring your kids to the games and matches?
It's been very good. It's been a surprise. I don't know that I graduated first time in 2004, so it's 20 years now. I didn't necessarily see that I would return here in a professional capacity. I also didn't know what I wanted to do in 2004. That's why I went to grad school, to figure that out. But I did get bit by the athletics bug here as a student worker, and that led me to grad school, to this idea of working in college athletics. And then I found my way into the academics. So that experience, just as a student worker, did launch my interest and basically put me on the path that led me back here that I didn't anticipate when I first came. But I had a great experience as an undergrad at Campbell. Obviously, the most important connection I made was with Tammy, my wife. That definitely lasts to this day. But some of my closest friends are still the friends I made here. I had very fond memories and nothing but positives to say when I was working at other institutions before I came back, and then the opportunity presented itself, and it was really cool in the sense that professionally it's satisfying because I'm doing what I want to do and what I really care about, but I get to do it at a place that I also have a personal connection to. So every time we're successful, I have the excitement of it's my workplace. You want to be in a successful workplace, but it's also my alma mater, so I'm a fan in the same way that everyone else who's attending a game and just cheering on the Camels. It's definitely a dual approach, I think, to that. And then for me, it's just been so many opportunities from an education from the first time I came here, the opportunity to work in athletics I didn't know was going to happen as a student that led me to other things. Then coming back, the opportunity to grow in my role from an academic advisor to leading our unit now. And then the opportunity to go back to school here was just, so I keep benefiting from Campbell University, basically. It keeps giving back to me.
When we go all the way back to when you were a student here 20 years ago, and it's, we talk about all the time, it's amazing what the athletic department and the university has gone through 5 years, 10 years, but 20 years, you're a student worker in Carter Gym in a Campbell team that is pretty much overmatched in the Atlantic Sun Conference. Talk about that time and what Campbell Athletics were about back then.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, it was my first taste of college athletics, so it's all I knew. So it was really exciting to me because I was working in the department. So we were in Carter Gym, but I got to be on the sideline, which the seats weren't very far away from the sideline. But I was on the floor in the corner for all our home basketball games, and I worked all the events that I had the opportunity to work. I worked volleyball games in there as a line judge. I worked wrestling matches in there. So yes, it was way different. I mean, no air conditioning. We know that it's a warm place to be in certain times of the year. It was loud because it filled up quickly because of the size of it, but it made for a really big environment. But yes, we were often overmatched with the schools we were competing against, particularly when I got here. That ASUN had, like UCF. They'd had a Heisman winner on the football team, and we don't have football back then. Yeah. And we're trying to compete in all of our sports against a 50,000 student major public university in Florida.
It's amazing, isn't it? People forget that. Yeah. Campbell and UCF were in the same conference less than 2 decades ago.
Yes, and Georgia State, who at the time, Lefty Driesell was their head. They had a national champion head coach coaching in Carter Gym against us as a conference foe. FAU was in the league. It was Troy, Samford, a lot of schools that were very challenging for us, and then we didn't have the facilities to match. And then now I understand more from that I didn't know then, the scholarships and things like that to be as competitive as we want to be. And then even thinking soccer games, Eeks, that complex, there was no McLeod Training Center.
Yeah.
So the only kind of facility was the building where tennis is. So that was the restroom for everybody for a softball or a soccer match, including the players. Locker rooms, our soccer teams would dress in Carter Gym and then walk up there pre-game. And then halftime, just huddled up on the sideline.
Yeah.
Or, that was your opportunity. So, but then in that environment, we beat UCF in women's soccer for the ASUN championship. And I was in an NCAA conference several years after I graduated and ended up at a table with a woman who had played on that UCF team, and she was still so bitter. And that day it felt really good to be a Camel and say, yeah, we did beat you. So it's amazing the success that we found with Wanda Watkins, obviously, winning in that environment, going to the NCAA tournament from those places is just really incredible. But I think what it did for everyone who was here is like, there's a real attachment and a fondness and like a real connection. And it was a great experience. It was a really enjoyable experience. I walked through Carter Gym with Justin Wilkins a few weeks ago, and we did that thing of, remember this or that, and this used to be over here. And so that's very fun to be on campus and go back and like kind of talk about with those who knew what it was like when we were there, and then to see where we're at now is fun.
And then you have such a unique experience. You traveled to some different colleges, one from your own schooling, one as Tammy is following her career path then of being a volleyball coach in college, and then you come back here in 2015, and I remind people, especially as we get into a new conference, when Campbell was first in the Big South Conference, they won one title their first year in the Big South. After the first 4 years, they had won 4 titles. It didn't just happen overnight, but 2015 was when it really started to cook, and all of this kind of foundation and building and finally putting the resources where they needed to be in this athletic department took off, and you were right here in the middle of it.
Yeah, it was really exciting to come back to and it was different in that way of, okay, now we're in a position to actually really compete at a high level to win championships. Other schools are chasing us. That was never part of my undergrad experience, where other schools in your conference were trying to catch up to you. And so, yeah, that was very exciting. And I had been at a couple of previous institutions that had had a lot of historic success, and sort of the feeling of their fan base and even in the department was a, disappointment for what was and no longer is. And so to have the opposite experience of remembering where we were and seeing nothing but growth. And I've had that conversation with some other people of feeling like you're catching the wave instead of hearing about the wave in the past, is so much more fun to work inside of, is to feel like you're on the rise.
Yeah. And then, to make it come, not even full circle, but I'm sure there are times it explodes your head if you would have gone back to college, Jared, and say, hey, you're going to be leading a department here someday in academics, and also Campbell's going to be in the CAA. That has to just be a whirlwind sometimes when you try to wrap your head around it.
Absolutely. No idea that was even a possibility for our future. One, I didn't even know the field I'm in existed as a student because it's not something that we, it's grown tremendously nationally since then. But at the time, Campbell didn't even really do what I do now. There wasn't a staff, and now we have a strong staff. There's 6 of us, working with our student athletes. So it wasn't even a possible dream at the time because it wasn't something that existed. And so that's how far, it was in grad school where I was introduced to this field. And then, like full circle to the thing I discovered, which was the connection that I wanted to have in athletics with the education, and to be able to do it here and not a different place that had things that we don't have. And now we're in a really strong position. And I think that's connected. Our student athletes are doing real. Our department is invested in this area. And so I'm able to work in a place that has committed. So I like to say I don't have to give the alumni discount, to work here. I accept things less than professionally because of the personal. It's really not that. It's professionally very good. And like we're in a winning situation. And then personally, it's satisfying, which is great.
The CAA, a lot of challenges as far as there's different travel, some different things, which makes the fact that the student athletes getting the highest GPA they ever had, more of a tip of a cap to you and your department. We talk a lot about CAA and the exposure and the teams and the things that it does for Campbell being a part of this conference on the field, on the course, on the diamond and that. From your perspective, when you see things from academically and the student part of the student athletes being in this conference, what advantages do you see?
Well, I think it broadens our scope. Just one, geographically, like we're going to farther away than we used to. So the experience is bigger. What we're doing athletically is larger than it was. It's not so concentrated in the Carolinas, and then so it also has different types of universities that are different exposures to different environments. We're going new peers. So even our student athletes say that are participating in our SAC at the conference level, who they're interacting with now. I mean, we have urban campuses, we have city campuses. That's just very different. Public schools, privates, with different backgrounds, and so different areas of where people are coming from, what they're used to, what their norms are. So I think it's just bigger and broadening our horizons, really, for our student athletes to see more of what is in their own experience.
Finally, we talked about you getting another degree from Campbell just about a week ago. Tell me about that path. What did you do and why'd you do it?
Sure. So I completed the Master's of Arts in Faith and Leadership Formation through the Divinity School. It's a relatively new program. I think it started 2 or 3 years before I entered into the program. So I started in spring of 22. Took a little bit longer to finish than the time frame design, but that ended up being very good. I learned about it through some of the advertisement we do internally of new program offerings. It's theological education for folks who aren't trying to go into full-time ministry. So it is through the Divinity School, a seminary, which traditionally those students there, that's their full-time vocation. And so a lot of people have asked me, what are you going to do with it now? And my response is, I'm not going to do anything different. It was personal growth. It was an opportunity to learn more about my faith, to explore myself and vocation and purpose in my work, which really appealed to me because I've always been interested in combining those things in an environment that was new to me. And then it gave me some education around that, but also it fit what I'm doing. I'm not called or going to be a pastor that's not something I see in my future. But I was able to gain a large education theologically that fit what I'm doing, because I feel it helps solidify what I'm doing, that I feel good about my purpose and my why and what I do now and how it can serve others and how it gives meaning that's attached to my faith. So it was really good.
And we'd mentioned before, your wife, Tammy, obviously a big part of this place as a student athlete, and then has been involved with the volleyball team on a volunteer basis. She is the color analyst on ESPN Plus and Flow Sports for volleyball, was part of the advancement department here at Campbell as well. What is she doing now? How is she doing?
She's doing well. She's still working in volleyball full-time. That's transitioned back into that, not at the college level, but working with a club here in the Triangle area. So it's Triangle Volleyball Club. It's I think it's been named one of the top 50 clubs in America. So it's a very strong club that's very high level with a lot of the individuals they have playing there, the kids on their teams. And so her day-to-day job is a recruiting coordinator at that club. So she's the liaison, helping the kids and their parents navigate the recruiting process from their side of things. And then she's also the main contact, especially early on before coaches are allowed to have direct contact to understand their rosters and things like that. So she is the contact for the college coaches as well. So it's been a great fit for her to stay in the volleyball world. Probably expanded her college network, coaching network, because they have quite a few high-level recruits. And so she's really engaged with the college coaching network, but also having the ability to work directly with these kids at a younger level. She's coaching teams there, changes throughout the years, but still very much volleyball, the game is her day-to-day. And then getting to do additional here at Campbell is kind of a cherry on the top, I think.
No doubt, no doubt. That is Jared Fries. Thank you for stopping by, Jared. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, that'll do it for us. This is the final Camel Call episode of the year. Stan Cole has a whole bunch of stuff coming up this summer, Tales for the Creek, so we'll still be putting out some episodes here. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Jared and Evan. I'm Chris Ameyer saying so long and have a great summer.